Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arunima Sharan, and I'm a senior research analyst here at OMFIF, and I'll be going through some of the key findings of our Gender Balance Index report today. The Gender Balance Index report tracks the presence of women and men in senior positions across financial institutions. The index, now in its 10th year, provides a comprehensive overview of the state of gender balance in the financial sector. This year, we track over 6,000 individuals in 336 institutions, which are 186 central banks, 50 sovereign funds, 50 pension funds, and 50 commercial banks. As a part of the research, we also have a survey of central banks about their gender-related HR policies. And this year, we also have perspectives from senior central bankers and financial industry experts on the state of gender balance in the sector. The main finding from our research and the report this year is that while there has been progress in achieving gender balance in the financial sector, this has been at a very slow pace. This is perhaps most evident when looking at the share of women in senior positions across different institutions. On the slide, the navy blue bars show data from 2022 and the light blue bars show the same data from 2023. As you can see, there's not a lot of women in senior positions, and there's not a lot of change from last year. At the senior-most level of governors and CEOs, this year, 14% are women, which has increased ever so slightly from 13.7% last year. Coming down the ladder of seniority, 24% of deputy governors and C-suite staff are women, a 1 percentage point increase from 2022. Looking at all senior staff this year, 30% are women. At the current rate of progress, based on our data, we find that it'll take 140 years to achieve gender balance in the topmost echelons of leadership, which is a very, very long time. The slow progress is clearly visible, especially when looking at central banks, which is the category of institutions that we have been tracking for the past 10 years. 22 out of 186 central banks are led by women today, and this is the highest the figure has been in a decade, as you can see on the slide. The 22 women lead 17 national central banks, the ECB, and 4 regional Federal Reserve banks in the US. Stepping back and looking at the full 10-year period, the number of women leading central banks has increased by just 1, from 21 in 2014 to 22 today. While having a woman in top leadership position is a sign of progress, it is not all that matters. In the index, we score institutions based on the number of women and men in senior positions. The highest score an institution can get is 100, which would mean that there are an equal number of men and women at this most senior staff level. You can refer to the report for a more detailed note on the methodology. Moving on to an overview of the institution's performance, the story of slow progress does continue. The chart shows the average scores for the 4 types of financial institutions over the past 6 years. Commercial banks were included in the index from 2021 only, which is why you can see 3 data points for that category. As you can see on the slide, there has been an increase in the global average score over the years, going from the light blue bars to the mauve bars. Across institutions, pension funds perform relatively better, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. However, they are also only halfway there to parity with an average score of 50 this year. The average score of commercial banks is 37, and the average score of central banks is 33, both of which have improved slightly compared to last year. Sovereign funds have the lowest scores, but are also the most improved set of institutions, as their score in 2018 was 13 and today has risen by 10 points to 23. Moving on now to the different types of institutions, I'll start first with central banks. On the slide, you can see the top 10 ranked central banks in the index this year. Overall, regional Federal Reserve banks from the US and small economies perform well. The Kansas Fed tops the ranking this year with a score of 96, making this the 3rd consecutive year that a regional Fed has held top rank. This year, the Richmond Fed and the Cleveland Fed also have high scores and are included in the top 10. Central banks from small economies have also historically performed well in the Gender Balance Index. This year, the Central Bank of Seychelles, Bank of Cape Verde, and the Central Bank of Samoa are in the top 10. All three countries are small island developing states whose GDP is less than $5 billion US, which is, for reference, approximately 0.02% of the GDP of the United States. Looking at larger economies, Australia is the only G20 country to be included in the top 10 this year with a score of 89. Norges Bank is the only European central bank with a score of 84. Stepping back and taking a more regional perspective, we find that while there has been an increase in the global score from 31 last year to 33 this year, there remain significant disparities in the different regions. On the map in the slides, the red circles show the scores for 2023 and the light pink circles show the scores for 2022. North America and Latin America performed relatively well with scores of 60 and 44 respectively. Asia and the Middle East continue to lag as they did in past years. Asia Pacific is the only region whose score declined in this year from 14 last year to 13 in 2023. And the region performs relatively poorly even among commercial banks, pension funds, and sovereign funds. Coming back to central banks, we find that banks are at different stages in terms of their progress towards gender parity, but for the most part are moving in the right direction. To understand exactly what banks are doing in terms of policies and programs, we surveyed 46 central banks as part of the index this year and find that 96% of them offer flexible work arrangements, allowing staff members to balance care duties with their careers. 57% have programs to promote women's progression, such as mentorship schemes, leadership schemes, and gender awareness trainings. And 42% of the respondents conduct a pay gap assessment, although at different frequencies. You can read more about these policies and others in the survey chapter of our report. Another key finding from this survey this year relates to paid parental leave that central banks offer. On the slide, the light blue bars show the share of responses with respect to maternal leave, and the navy blue bars show the same for paternal leave. Very clearly, you can see the disparity in the duration of paid leave that is offered for both parents. 100% of the respondents offer some form of paid maternal leave. Most of them offer between 3 to 6 months. Not all banks offer paid paternal leave. 91% of the respondents said that they do so. Most of them offer between 0 to 3 months of paid paternal leave, which suggests that this is an area where banks across the board can improve policy. When looking at commercial banks, which is the next category of institutions, we find that there is plenty of scope for improvement. Only one bank scores higher than 70 in this year's index, which is Standard Chartered, and is ranked first. Looking more broadly at all 50 commercial banks, we find that 16% are led by women, which is up from 14% last year. 54%, so more than half of the 50 commercial banks, do not have any women in their C-suite, which is a cause for concern when looking at the future of female leadership in these institutions. We also look at the performance of 50 of the largest pension funds and sovereign funds from the index, and based on the scores, there is a clear disparity in the performance of the two types of funds. The aggregate score for pension funds this year is 50, while the aggregate score for sovereign funds is 23. Canada Pension Plan Investment Board is the highest ranking pension fund this year with a score of 94. This is increased by 42 points from last year following changes to the gender balance in their C-suite. The top 5 institutions among pension funds are rounded out by other funds from Canada, US, and Europe. In the case of sovereign funds, Victorian Funds Management Corporation in Australia is the top-ranking sovereign fund for the 4th consecutive year. We spoke to Kate Galvin, who is the CEO of VFMC, about what the fund does for gender balance and their practices in general, and you can read more about this in the chapter on sovereign funds and pension funds in the report. For the most part, other sovereign funds from North America, Australia, and Europe score highly, with the exception of the Chilean Sovereign Fund, which ranks 3rd and has a score of 85. A unique part of our research for GBI is that in addition to the institution-level performance and the presence of women in senior leadership positions, we also look at the types of roles that women hold. Taking a closer look at executive committees in pension funds, sovereign funds, and commercial banks, our data shows that these are predominantly male. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's 445 women in executive committees in our index compared to 1,071 men. In addition to the difference in the number of men and women in these committees, there's also a difference in the types of roles that they hold. 62% of the women are in revenue-generating roles compared to 83% of the men who are in similar roles, as you can see on the navy blue parts at the chart. The types of role that people hold matters, as it is more likely that future leaders are chosen from those who hold revenue-generating roles, such as the head of a business division, as compared to someone in a more internal-facing administrative role, such as the head of audit and HR. In our report this year, we also interviewed financial industry experts who outlined the barriers women face in their career progression and suggested solutions to overcome these. All the interviewees mentioned childcare requirements as a key barrier to progression for women in the sector, and they also pointed to hiring practices and institutional work cultures as challenges. They note that while there has been progress in improving gender balance in entry-level positions, this has not necessarily translated to the senior positions. Some of the potential solutions that they suggested to improve the situation include more transparent hiring processes, transparency around diversity data in firms, and mentorship schemes for women, which can improve gender balance, especially at the senior levels. The impact of all of this, of improving gender balance in the industry, matters a great deal. We also interviewed Heather Kipnis from the IFC for the report, who mentioned that the benefits of gender inclusion can be higher returns, less risk, and greater impact. And this sentiment can be extended to all financial institutions more broadly, where more gender diversity in leadership positions can improve policy and performance of these institutions. We hope that the report can be a comprehensive snapshot of the state of gender balance across financial institutions, as well as a call to action for improvement. We would like nothing more than to be proven wrong about it taking 140 years to achieve gender parity in leadership. For more details about the key findings and insights, you can download the report from the website on this slide. I would like to now introduce my colleague, Emma McCarthy, who is the head of the Sustainable Policy Institute here at OMFIF for the next part of the launch event. Thank you.